Good morning and welcome to Smart Connection Consultancy's second webinar on synthetic sports fields, where we're going to focus today on standards for synthetic fields. What I would like to do for the next 20 minutes or so is just take you through some of the key issues regarding sports standards for 3G fields and what you need to consider. So, quick introductions, look at some standard overviews, and then specifically for some of the key sports, and then look at the civil and the playability standards, and then the absolute critical importance of warranties and guarantees to reduce the risk. So, welcome. Smart Connection Consultancy have a values and approach that we want to share as much knowledge as we can to make it easier for local governments and schools and universities and sport to understand and appreciate the benefits of synthetic sports fields and how they can work together with natural turf and complement the supply and demand challenges that people are facing. We do this through the smart guides. So we've done 5 of these on surfaces, standards, some of the challenges, maintenance, and also the environmental impacts and sustainability. We also are running these for webinars. There's a LinkedIn discussion group, and then we offer consultancy services as well. So in terms of standards, or an overview for standards, there are a number of considerations when we look at standards for 3G fields. It's not just about saying we want a FIFA quality or a FIFA quality pro field and let everybody else do whatever they want. There are a significant amount of standards that need to be considered to make sure you are purchasing something for the next 10, 20 years and it's done to the standard that's expected. So there are international sport federations such as FIFA World Rugby, AFL, Rugby League, etc., who have standards for all of the major sports, and hockey is included in there. There are also local overlays like Football New South Wales, Football Victoria, Football Queensland, etc., who have standards that need to be designed in, and also the makeup of the facilities. There are specific needs, though, for Australia. So the best way I can describe this is FIFA, World Rugby, etc., have developed a number of standards for fields, whether that be community or professional fields, and they are actually the lowest denominator that they can get through everybody around the world. They're not always fit for purpose for what we need. So we need to include some Australian specific needs on top of whatever the International Sports Federation is. So we've worked really closely with FIFA to actually identify the aspects which are important in Australia to improve the usage and the standards of performance, standards of safety, and standards of the fields in our environments, which other areas around the globe don't have. So it's really important that some of these aspects are built in, and we'll come into that later. The sports field is obviously the green synthetic on top, but it's absolutely critical that the civil engineering standards are taken into account, and they should be driven through the Geotech engineer assessments. Without that, you'll actually have fields which may not live up to a 20-year expectation, and that will impact on safety, it will impact on performance, and it will impact on the ability to have certification against those sports. And some sports like rugby and Australian rules, you have to have it certified to train on and play on. There are a number of Australian standards for the civils, even for goalposts, fences, lighting, that need to be embraced and put in. We can't just assume that a tender or a supplier will do this for you. And then, not forgetting, there may be council overlays or standards for equipment, for water, for design, how wide the pathways are, how thick the paths are. So all of these standards need to be embraced and brought in as part of every project. And if we don't, I think that these are the type of fields that we may get in the future. This was put down in Victoria, and it was done as a design and construct, and therefore a movable soil. And it wasn't really done on the civil engineering side. The product was fine on top, but the civil engineering just didn't work because it wasn't done to the standards that were needed. So, as I said earlier on, all the major sports actually have standards for play. They may be a single standard, or there may be two standards within some of those sports. So, for instance, football have a quality standard and a quality pro standard. So the quality pro, excuse me, the quality pro standard is actually for stadium or professional sport. Australian rules have one, which is community. Rugby union have one, which is both for professional or stadium and also for community, so, but they only have one standard. Rugby League have two, community and stadium. Hockey have four standards, from global standard all the way down to multi-sport. And there is actually a multi-sport standard, which is called the one sport concept. And there are numerous fields around Australia that have incorporated soccer, football, Australian rules, and the two rugby codes in one field. And we'll show you some of those later. So most of the sports have used football, FIFA, quality concept, which started out in the early 2000s as the basis for what they do. And FIFA have invested more into it than probably all of the other sports put together. So within football, there's predominantly two standards. It used to be called FIFA 1, FIFA 2 Star. It's now called FIFA Quality and FIFA Quality Pro. Now, there isn't a better standard. They're just two different standards for two different environments. So the FIFA Quality has more durability built into it and has to be retested every 3 years. A FIFA Pro is a faster field, which is good for the professional sports because that's how they like it, professional players, but it has to be redone every year. And if it fails FIFA Quality, it fails full stop. It doesn't go to FIFA Quality from FIFA Quality Pro. So you have to then go back and have it completely retested against FIFA Quality if it fails. The International Match Ball standard is actually the same as the FIFA Quality, but it's there just in case some organizations don't want to go through the FIFA handle, they can actually get it done to that stage. So the FIFA Quality Manual was updated in 2015, and it's continually updated a few times a year. Now, there's two parts to the standard. There's the handbook of test methods, and there's a handbook of requirements. So one tells you what you need to achieve, and the other one is how you actually achieve it. And those requirements are slightly different for each of the criteria that they've got. So this is an example down here. So we have some characteristics, ball rebound, ball roll, etc. And then it says what you have to achieve within Quality Pro, and then what you have to achieve in Quality. So you can see in FIFA Quality, the ball rebound can be from 60 to 100 centimeters, as opposed to 60 to 85. In the ball roll, it can go 4 to 8, as opposed to 4 to 10, and then 4 to 12. So it's a faster surface. Shock absorption is 60 to 70% and 55 to 70%, so on and so forth. And then these are the booklets that you can actually get. So it's retested every 1 year for Quality Pro and every 3 years for Quality. But we do need additional standards in certain areas in Australia. And those standards include durability, such as the test that they use as the list sports test, which looks like a pair of boots that go up and down on the field. We don't think the standards are good enough. So within Australia, we ask for extensive testing of this. Also, the shock pad, we don't think the shock pad tests are good enough. So we're actually using the NRL standards, which will be released very soon. And we want a warranty that is for 60 hours, not for the normal 40 hours, because we believe that 60 hours of play in Australia, we need to make sure they can last that usage. So why why accept something that's less than that? So the next stage is other. So we look at higher porosity for the heavy weather. In terms of safety, we're actually putting more in on PAHs and lead and ingestion on toy standards. We've incorporated microplastic design, which we've been doing now for 2 or 3 years, and FIFA are now addressing that. NRL and Rugby have addressed that as well. We also look at the reporting on maintenance, which isn't done to the standard that we do. And we've got about 20 other additional standards in our smart specifications to reduce risk, enhance performance, and extend life expectancy. Australian rules. So the standard covers both football and cricket, but the cricket is only for the outfield at present. The latest AFL Cricket Australia guidelines were produced in March 2018, and the focus is on community sport, not AFL. We test every 2 years, and there have been a number of pitches installed in both Victoria and New South Wales. And the latest one from memory was Gore Oval in Willoughby Council, which changed the pitch around by 90 degrees. It was running north-south, and they're going to build where these trees are. They're going to build a sports stadium there in the future. Every year, this used to get flooded by a meter. So there's extensive design around this to actually allow for the water to be stored underneath as part of the overall design. ELS Hall ride has AFL and also football, soccer on there as well. And it's interesting this because they actually have a cork infill here, which is received really well. Another recent one is down at Carrum Downs, Frankston City Council wanted a soccer and AFL field, but because of the size of what they want and because they wanted cricket, we actually moved the design for the football upwards to allow the cricket wicket to be 3 meters off the edge. And because it's predominantly being used for soccer, we actually had green lines painted or sewn in around, and then the AFL was outside there. But we also took the opportunity, you can just see, to put in some mini fields so that they could be used for training when the soccer pitch is being used. And that gives greater flexibility and encourage as maintenance to move around into the different areas. So we did the design for that. In terms of World Rugby, so they have one standard which is called Regulation 22. So this is actually in the rules of the game, which actually turns around and says the players play on it. And it's used for both professional and for local games. So in the UK and in France, you play the top level, like Super Rugby from Australia, on synthetic turf fields. Latest edition was issued in 2020, and there should be another one due out in December, which will also say that, also expected to say that the length of the yarn will be reduced from 60 mil, which is the minimum at the moment with a shot pad, down to 50 mil with a shot pad. That will make it very compatible with other football codes. Retesting here is for every 2 years. There are a number of synthetic fields that have been done around rugby. Woollahra number 2, which is Woollahra City Council, and also for East Rugby. And this is probably one of the best fields that I've seen, certainly for rugby around. And it's got a cork infill as well. Also has a couple of flood problems, which has been addressed on here. Latham Park in Randwick, it's an open area. It's got rugby, and then in the corner here on the right hand side, there's an area for practice and scrum. We wanted to keep the topsoil, etc., on site. So what happened is we've actually put some viewing mounds down the side here and at the back, and the back over there, so that people can sit and watch the game. Rugby League. This is the draft standard which will be issued later on this year. There isn't any international sports federation that produces it for rugby. So we work with the UK's Rugby Football League, who have standards over there. And then we've Australianised them into 2 parts, ready for the NRL to publish them. Gets retested every 2 years, and it's for community and annually for the stadium standard. It's built upon the FIFA standards, but they've actually gone 1 step further than FIFA and introduced a number of other standards. Now, the thing I absolutely love about this is they actually have a pre-match maintenance test check that gets done before the games are used. And this actually addresses, similar to the 2-metre boundary that goes around, say, MCG or the Sydney Football Ground, and that could be used for the really like the pre-match maintenance tests. So there's only one rugby league field solely at the moment, as opposed to the combined one, and that's at Kellyville Ridge in Blacktown. Another one, the tender closed earlier this week for one at Randwick Council. Hockey, as I said before, they've got 4 classifications: global elite, global, national, and also multi-sports. And multi-sports, which is also called one sport concept, is really about playing all sports on a single surface. So whether that be Union League, soccer, hockey, or indeed Aussie rules. Minimum of 60 mil yarn, and because of that, the yarn actually slows some of the balls down because of the free height. So hockey don't like it as a standard, if you like, but it is actually very good for teaching youngsters hockey so they can control the ball a lot easier. But in terms of the higher grade hockey, they really don't like this. This is an example of Field of Moor Park, which is used for football, Union League, and also for AFL training. So you can see the goals set for both rugby and for soccer, but you can also see the yellow lines here, which are for 5-a-side. So the nets come across both the length and also the width, and you play 5-a-side, and they're exceptionally well used up in Sydney because of the situation of it. And from recollection, it's about 80 hours a week it's being used. So it won't last 12 years or 10 years, but the unit rate that they're charging for it means they'll be able to replace this after about 6 or 7 years, and it's about 5 years old now. It's still not really. This is another multi-sports one. So this has been set up for football, AFL, cricket, and also for rugby. So you can just about see the blue lines on here for rugby, predominantly used for soccer in the winter. Exceptionally well used, about 6 years old now, and it's laid on the top of a very reactable rubbish tip. The really important thing is the civil and the playability standards. So the Geotech needs to set the performance standards for the pavement and the subbase. Without that, you could just put 15 centimetres of gravel down and then put the grass on, and it would look brilliant for the first probably 6 months, and then it would get worse and worse as the soil gets moist and dries out as the year changes. It's also really important that you get the right standards for your drainage in terms of a rain event every 1 in 10 years, or 1 in 20 years, or 1 in 100 years if you want to be really conservative. And once you identify philosophically what your rain event is, you then need to make sure that the stormwater capacity can cope with the annual rain intensity. If it can't, you need then to be able to store the water or detain the water from going out to the stormwater, and there's various ways of doing that. There are a significant amount of Australian standards for civils, concrete, fences, drainage, etc. So they need to be identified and built in. And that's why it's important to work with a sports engineering company. Like we do all of our works with sports eng, because they understand that and they know how they brought the engineering standards into the sporting environment. Also, in terms of equipment, there are a number of Australian standards and safety standards like Football New South Wales, goal and post guidelines. If you don't get the drainage right, it's going to cause you significant problems. These are drainage challenges on natural turf, but it happens just as much on synthetic turf. So this is a synthetic turf with a cork infill. So people have said, oh, does that mean we shouldn't have cork infill? And my answer to that is no. This isn't a reason why you shouldn't have cork infill. This is actually just an example of a very poorly designed field who didn't do the drainage strategy properly. Because what they did is they had a drainage cell which was 10 mil, which basically vertically goes through the surface and then takes it all the way on an angle. But this is the width that they actually identified. So they didn't do the annual rain event. Otherwise, they would never have designed something so small. So it wouldn't have mattered what the inside or what the infill was. It would never have drained away in that circumstance. In terms of the warranties and the guarantees, these are manufacturer driven. So you need to ensure each component of your warranties in the system meet your needs, i.e. 60 hours a week, flat sole shoes, boots, whatever it is, because if you don't specify that, the warranties will be invalid if you're using it in excess of, say, 60 hours or only using it with flat sole shoes. So it's absolutely critical that these are addressed within the specification. And this will improve, and these should be manufacturer warranties. It's no use, I don't think there's any use having a management guarantee because you don't know whether the management company will be around in 20 years' time. So it has to go back to the manufacturer. If you're not confident in that, take a bond out to hold against a management guarantee for the amount of damage you're going to get. So we are now emphasising the warranties as far stronger than we've ever done before because of some of the product that are being put in. So that concludes my part of the presentation. So what I'd like to do now is ask you what your issues are, and please feel free to email me and I'll answer them within a day and come back to you. Or more importantly, join our discussion group at LinkedIn. Thank you very much, and I hope that was helpful for you.